There's a moment a lot of corporate professionals have, usually somewhere between the third meeting of the day and the fourth unanswered email, where they think, I didn't build someone else's dream this hard to feel this empty, and something doesn't feel right. And then they go back to their desk, and leaving is not as easy as it sounds because they have a good salary, the job is safe, they know what they're doing, they're very competent, they may have some friends there, and leaving all of that behind to do something else is massive uncertainty. So here's the truth. Leaving corporate isn't the scary part. It's leaving without a map. I'm here with the one and only Chenise Upshur, who helps corporate professionals do that one thing that they are most afraid of, and that's exit with a plan, with clarity, with something real waiting on the other side. So, Shanice, I'm excited to get into this conversation because I do feel, and correct me if I'm wrong on this stat, um, about 78, 80% of people are in a job they don't love. Is that something like, is that a, yeah, okay,
That,
cool.
that- yes.
And,
Yeah.
and maybe we'll
Which is
start there.
crazy.
In a job they don't love, but they're so afraid to pursue something else. So let's start with that.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, right? Like you look at the numbers, there's this huge, number, these huge ranges. And I know like specifically in the US, I think it's only like 30% of people who feel engaged, they feel excited about going to work. And you look at those numbers and you're like, why aren't we seeing something different? But I think to what you kind of alluded to, it gets hard. And I think back to myself when I entered the corporate world and, at that time, I was working part-time. I was a single mom. I had a 7-month-old little boy. And for me, going into the corporate world meant stability. It meant safety. It meant, making sure that my son had a roof over his head. He got to go to private schools. And even when I had a moment where for me, I was like, I think I need to be done. Like even within myself, there was so much angst around that decision. And so, for so many people, it's more of this mindset thing, right? Like how do we walk through that? How do we have this strong mind that's able to, look at this not just from the here and now, but this future state. And it wasn't until I kind of sat with myself and I was like, I don't want to be 70 years old looking back and being like, wow, I had this amazing corporate life, instead of saying, wow, I took a leap and I tried. And I remember telling my boss at the time, even if I, you know, burn out, even if it ends up being, a whole wash, like I'd rather try and fail than not try at all. And so for people who get to that point where it's like, yes, there's all this stability, so to speak, right? And, especially here in the US, there's all of these things that it looks like they're winning with being in corporate. When you get that moment when you're like, my creativity, my talent, my skills, they're not my own, and I really want them to be my own. That's where I come in and I get to help and support those individuals build those plans so they don't feel like they're jumping out of a plane without some kind of parachute or safety net. And it's been such a pleasure to work with individuals in that space.
So cool. How did you know it was like the right time for you? Like on the outside, it's like, what are you crazy?
Yeah,
Surely someone said you're crazy, right? Like doing it with a
a lot of
newborn and
people.
all that. Yeah, okay. So can you talk about that?
A lot of people. Yeah. So when I was in corporate, my last role in corporate, I worked in strategy, right? So I supported North America. We had around 1,000 sellers and leaders that I supported and built out strategy plans. Lots of fun. And I got to do this project with Canada, helping out with some leadership initiatives and some career development. Was great, like tons of really good feedback. And HR actually put a meeting on my calendar, and I was like, yes, we're going to get to roll this out to the US as well, not just Canada. And they pretty much told me that because I didn't have the word manager in my title, if I didn't shut the program down, I would get a verbal warning, right? Which was crazy because I had been a manager, a senior manager in previous roles. And like that was that moment when I was like, I'm done. I'm done. Like, never again am I going to put this much energy, creativity, like life force even into these amazing programs and this be the outcome of it. So that's when I started thinking about it. So I decided to go and get my coaching certificate and, finish up a couple of things that kind of needed to be taken care of at home. And then I had the opportunity when they were reshuffling some things and I was going to be moved to a different organization. And I was like, you know what? No time like the present. And so put in my notice, ended up leaving that corporation, really didn't know, what it was going to look like. I knew what I wanted to do, but had no idea, what was my vehicle going to be? How was this going to work? I just knew it was time. And I think for me, the biggest thing that made that decision be a then moment, I remember telling myself, like, there's no way I can work full time, like continue what I'm doing and still have all the creativity that I need to put together all of this stuff that's in my head and all of these things that I know that I'm capable of. And sometimes people get to that point too, right? It's like, I can't do
Mm.
both anymore. And sometimes you can, right? It just depends on the person and the way that they think and the way that their brain works. But yeah, that was a big thing for me, that moment when, thinking that a program was going to be expanded and actually got shut down. That was very, very pivotal for me.
Mm. So when you left, did anyone try to talk you out of it? Like, no, don't do it. Just put up with it, and you got a good job. You got a good thing going, you know?
Yes, yes. My leaders did. I had friends and families that did. Co-workers, even some of the people that I supported in some of those roles, right? Like, hey, if you don't want to be in this team, like, we'll find you something else over here. So people were very forthcoming with other solutions. But I think by that time, I was like, for me at least, seeing my skill sets kind of being like put in this like box, you don't have this title, so these are the small things that you can do. I think I had just gotten to the point where I was like, you know what, you guys could come up with this amazing role, but just knowing that there's going to be all this red tape, blue tape, orange tape, yellow tape around what I'm doing, I was like, I don't want it anymore.
So for someone watching this right now who's thinking, okay, I'm feeling ready. Obviously, you are if you're watching this right now. Everyone's telling me not to do it, but I'm gonna do it
Yeah, yeah.
anyway. Are there any ducks that someone should have lined up, or is that kind of an illusion, or maybe more of a mindset or a belief?
It depends on the person, right? And so honestly, like when I think about, some of the clients that I'm working with, they come from all different kinds of backgrounds, what they're looking to build. Every single thing is completely different, right? Like I have individuals who are doing coaching. I have someone who's opening up a winery. I have people who have sound bath studios, right? So a whole range and slew of different types of things that people are going into. But I think the biggest thing is just having some kind of support, right? Whether that's from a coach, whether that's from family, and taking the time to make sure that you understand, like, what are my steps? What are my goals going to look like? What does good look like? I recently started working with a client who decided to make that corporate jump. Extremely proud of them. But when they came to me, they were like, hey, we actually made the jump last year. And, I've hired a sales team and I hired in marketing, but I haven't built my plan yet. And I was like, what are you doing? So they actually had a salesperson in, but they didn't have targets for the salesperson. They didn't even understand, what math that they needed to use to get to the target. So we built all of that for them, doing much, much better now. So I would say definitely have some kind of plan, right? And that is where, I come in, right? Helping people build that plan so that when they do make this jump, yes, you're going to have those people that are still nervous for you because they love you. Or because they, want to tap into your zone of genius, as I like to call it. But it does help to feel like, okay, I'm ready if you've got that parachute in your hand before you jump.
And so for someone thinking this right now, like should they, if they wanted to say consult you and stuff, and we'll talk about your tiny challenge in a second, should they be kind of clear on what they want to do, or do you help them with that process too?
I do. And the interesting thing is, I would say probably about 90% of the time people come to me and they're like, I have this idea, this is what I'm going to do. And by the third day, it's completely changed. Right?
Yeah.
It's so interesting to me. And I think, a lot of times when people come in, they've been told, hey, here's the skills that you have, here's the way that you have to use them. And they've never had a quiet moment or a creative moment to think about using those skills differently. So they're still thinking about their skills like so siloed. And then we start talking and we open up the creativity. We think about things from a different perspective. We look at things from a new lens, and these new ideas just like come blossoming forth, and it's amazing. I had one of my first clients that I actually got to work with when he came in and we started working together. Day one, he was like, I've got all this background in technology. Like, I want to be a website developer. Maybe I'll create some apps for people. Maybe I'll do like fractional, CTO type work. And I was like, okay. I was like, we're still going to go through the process, right? And then day three, he got on the call and I was like, hey, how's it going? What's going on in your mind? And he was like, you know what? I was doing a lot of thinking last night, and everything that I told you day one and day two, he's like, toss it out the window. He's like, I really started thinking about like what are the big problems like I would be so excited to solve for people and help people with every single day. And I really want to be a divorce coach for dads. And he was saying how he had gone through so much just trauma and frustration when he had gone through his own divorce and had wanted somebody there beside him, not just his lawyer, right, but somebody there to hold his hand, to support him, and to be kind of that confidant even. And so he was like, that's what I want to do. Like, I would love to be that for dads going through divorce, right? So completely different, complete 180. And more often than not, when we start working together, ideas that just may have never even popped up in people's minds is what ends up coming forth.
So cool. So what are some like of the common what ifs that people think about and like, oh, what if I do this and I fail? Or what if I do this and it doesn't work and I can't have to go back to my job? Or what ifs?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
if? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's it, right? Like there's so many different ways that your minds can go, and working with corporate professionals specifically, like we are so like problem solution mindset, and we're so like strategy mindset. Like our brains can come up with like 9,000 problems where none exists, right? Like it's a blessing and a curse sometimes. But I had another client, right? So great example. We started working together, and his biggest limiting belief was that his entire identity was tied into like his corporate role, his title that he had, all of these different things. And so he was like, hey, these skills, all of these things that I do, the only people that are going to care about them are other, Fortune 500 individuals. Like no one else is going to care about them, right? That was his biggest thing. So a huge part of the work that I do with individuals is working through what are some of those limiting beliefs, because everybody's going to have a little bit different. I worked with somebody one day and she was like, my growing up, my mom always told me, I hope you marry rich because you're never going to amount to something. And, working through that, supporting her through that so that she could even get in a place to where she saw actual value in the skills that she had and in what she had to offer. So, it's interesting, right? Like there's no like one limiting belief that comes up more often than not. A lot of times they're tied to different experiences that people have ran into, but at the base of it all is really this idea of like, will I actually be successful? So
Mm.
just helping people through that, helping people understand and like reframe sometimes even for success for them, right? Like, what does success mean? And for me, it was being able to say, hey, I'm 70 years old and I'm looking back on my life with no regrets. It wasn't saying like, hey, I'm 70 years old and I, have $10 million dollars and I have houses in 5 different continents, right? Like it was solely this piece of knowing that I could look back and there's nothing that I would change, nothing I would say, man, I wish I did this differently. So sometimes even reframing for people like what success actually means is a huge part of helping them through their limiting beliefs.
So good. So good. Okay. Let's talk about your tiny challenge. Let's talk about your tiny
Yeah.
challenge. And then, but before I got one more question that's kind of on my mind
Yeah.
am I too old to do this? Or like, oh, yeah, I'm I'm 60. Ah, stuff it. It's too late, you know?
Right, right. At what point do you just say, never mind, let me stay in corporate for forever? No, I mean, and honestly, the way that I look at it is the age factor, the time that you're in corporate, the experience, right? Like these are all additional skills that you can lean into. Um, I I'm clearly not like 20, right? Like I'm about to be 41 next week. And so it's like, yes, there's all of these skills that we have, all of these things that we can lean into. Us old heads got it as good as the young bucks over there. And so just thinking it from the perspective of like, that's going to give you additional life experiences. That's going to give you maybe different viewpoints and just leaning into that as you're building out. And we're kind of working together and building out the business. Now, if you come to me and say, hey, Chenise, I want to retire in 2 months, right? 2 months really isn't that long of a time frame to build a business. But if you're like, hey, you know what? I've had this idea. I've always thought it would be great to do XYZ. Like, let's lean in. Let's go.
So cool. So cool. All right, let's talk about your tiny challenge. This is one-on-one challenge, 5 days, 5 days with you.
Yes.
One-on-one with Shanice, the
Yes.
person you see right now. Right now, I understand there's no charge for it, which is wild, but
Correct.
you can only allocate
Yeah.
maybe 3 spots a month at most because it's one-on-one with you for 5 days,
Exactly.
5 calls over 5 days. What is it? What does it do? What does it mean?
Yeah, so we worked together for 5 days. And I like to say, that moment that somebody has that thought in their mind of like, you know what am I doing? Um, I could do something better myself, right? Like that's kind of like when I appear. And from there, it's like, okay, you've had this thought. Now, what does that actually look like? Let's take the time. Let's build the business together. I actually use the ESCAPE framework. It's an acronym. I love acronyms, and we go through step by step, and we take the time and we evaluate like what are those skills that you have, and then we strategize. How are you going to use them? What are you going to lean into? We take some time and clarify, okay, what does this look like? Are we looking at a product, a process, a service? How exactly do you want to utilize your skill? We take a lot of time in that activate space, which is what are all those roadblocks? So, kind of what we are talking about around those limiting beliefs. Because if you have this amazing thing, but you're too nervous to talk about it, or you don't know how to get it out, or, I had a client and I was reminding him, like, hey, like, keep going, keep going. And the first time that he ever tried to record a video, he took 63 takes, right? 63 takes on one video. And now, he called me, he's like, hey, 2 takes and it was done. I was like, perfect. That's what we're looking for. But it took all of that work and that activate space to keep him pushing through in those moments, taking the time to help those individuals position, right? What does marketing look like? How are we going to get whatever it is you want to utilize to serve the world out there? And then how do we execute? How do we build consistency, right? Like us corporate people, like we love our processes. We think on quarter chunks of time. How do we build these amazing processes in place so you can execute again and again and again and start to have these repeatable results? So that's what we work through in the 5 days so that at the end of it, it's like, okay, I've got my skills that I know I want to lean into. I know how I want to use them. I know who's going to benefit from them. I understand what this is going to look like, high level, from like getting the word out about this product, process, service, whatever it is, and even have started formulating some of the ideas around execution.
So good. So good. So if
Yeah.
you're watching this right now and you're in corporate and you're thinking there has to be more than what I'm doing right now for me, comment more below and Shanice will get back to you on how you can apply to have
Yeah.
one of those awesome lucky spots in her tiny challenge, just one-on-one 5 calls with her. Or maybe if you don't want to comment publicly because you're thinking, I don't want my boss to know, that kind of stuff, which is cool too,
Get
right?
that.
Maybe you don't want someone to know
Yeah.
right now. Send her a private DM. Like if you're watching this right now,
Yeah.
click on her profile, send her a private DM more, and have that private conversation with her. And it'll be all confidential. We're not going to post it on publicly, and you're not declaring to the world that you're quitting or anything like that. So,
Right.
but if
Right.
you want to comment more or send her a private DM more, she'll get back to you on how you can apply to have one of those spots. There's no charge for it, but there is limited spots for sure. Shanice, final words of wisdom before we wrap up.
Um, I would say my final word of wisdom is just do it scared, right? Like do it scared. I have this thing that I say is like, I don't have to be perfect until I hit number 20, right? So, and that has helped me so much, right? So like I'll tell myself, hey, you don't have to have the perfect video until you do 20. You don't have to have the perfect pitch until you do 20. You don't have to have the perfect podcast until you do 20. And so then for me, like it's gas to get to that 20 instead of like, oh my goodness, the second one wasn't what I wanted. And then you crash and kind of like come in on yourself, which I see so many people do. So find a number. It's, you know, for me, it's 20. Maybe for you, it's 5 or 10. Maybe you're a high achiever and it's only 2, right? Find that number that you kind of say like, hey, this is the number that I have to go to. And then I can worry about being perfect so that this way you just, you know, you can kind of relax a little bit and take some of the stress off of you.
So cool, so cool. Shanice, this has been wildly valuable. If you guys got value, type in value in the comment section below, but also comment more as well if you like more details on that. Thank you, Shanice. This has been super useful, and thank you
Thank
for being on
you.
the podcast.
Awesome.